All right, so I'm going to get my lovely assistant to go ahead and start up Carpenter, and you'll be able to see that when we click on the actual action, we'll be taken to a page with more information, and then there's a launch button in there, and that will actually launch Carpenter.
So George, just mindful of time here, we're looking at about 7 minutes to run through this one.
Okay, so we're probably not going to get all the way through, but I'll start it up and we can get as far as we can. I'll just rely on you to give me a cutoff. So Carpenter, as I said, is one of the ones that we did for Career Labs, and it is more of the walk version. So this is going to give you a lot more information because it's aimed at people who are not yet carpenters and are trying to see if this would be a good experience for them. So I'm going to come over here, very similar menu to what we had before, but we also have the option of having a male or female narrator.
Good morning.
So now you're going to hear the narration.
The crew is all here today, nice and early, and we've got a busy day ahead. We'll be working on 3 different houses and doing a range of construction tasks to round out our time together.
One thing we'll notice in these scenarios here is that there's NPCs, the non-player characters. And there's one right there working away, taking some notes. Just adds a little bit more immersion there. There you go. Got some dirt on it. Adds a little bit more immersion, but the nice thing we can do with these NPCs is we can actually interact with them. Not in this scenario, but other scenarios. We can actually interact with them, work on soft skills development.
Stack a 2x6 beside the workbench. Grab an 8-foot length, and we'll cut the first 2 pieces of the header. Place it on the workbench so we can do our layout.
All right, let's go ahead and grab us a 2x6. And you'll notice my amazing strength. I'm able to hold this at arm's length. One of the things about VR is we are able to have whatever strength level that you want. What we can do is we can actually make objects feel more weighty by delaying their movement. So it's actually harder to move them. It's a really interesting thing. And you won't be able to, I won't be able to express it, but I would highly encourage you to jump in VR and try it out. Another thing that we can do is we can pop up this extra information. In this case, we're using these little pop-ups that give you information that's not directly related to the task, but is related to the job or the environment. We can put up statistics like if you're working with a specific piece of machinery that, you know, make sure that the torque specs are this, or make sure that this section is off or this person has been notified, you know, tag out, all that kind of great stuff. So I'm going to grab my tape measure, bring it down here. We'll see how close I can get here. 41, nice.
Right on, not bad.
Yeah, so one thing that we can also do is we can use secondary implements. So right now I'm just using a pair of standard controllers, but we do have access to things like pen controllers. So if there's a lot of paperwork in an experience, we can use a specific device for that. We can also create for you extra pieces of hardware to interface with the real world. So if you need to work on a physical machine, what we can do is we can do a data connection to that machine so that when you change something in VR, it will actually change it in the real world. So I'm going to go ahead and mark my spot here.
What's funny is we talked about not being subject matter experts until we actually get in there and work with the subject matter experts and learn about these tasks. And it might seem simple, but a lot of these techniques that we learn about here are the same. I was building a board and batten wall in my entryway, and I had to use these exact same techniques using the miter saw, things like that. It was kind of cool.
Yo, great work. We are going to do the same thing for the
Look at that line, beautiful line.
one of the hardest things, and nobody will ever tell you this, the hardest things to do in VR is actually draw on something. The very fact that we have it in this experience is kind of amazing. Most people will stay away from it specifically because it never quite looks perfect, and it's very hard to do without the actual pen. And that's why I always say that we can use those external forces, because if you're doing a lot of pen work, it's definitely worth having.
Yeah, and for a lot of these scenarios as well, it's all procedural, right? We want to teach the procedures, teach the proper steps. You know, you can hone in on your craft of making a straight line later on with a real pencil.
Pick up a 2x4 and put it on the bench. Mark it at 41 inches as well.
So we're going to do the same procedure again. One thing that we often have in experiences like this where we need to them to do a specific procedure is that we won't allow you to go ahead of the procedure. So while the narrator is talking, we won't let you actually do the next task.
Yeah, and that's the difference there between as George mentioned, the crawl, the walk, and the run. You know, this is kind of between a crawl and a walk because it's more educational, more step-by-step, more guided. Once we get into something like a run where we're doing, you know, full simulated training, then you can go ahead and do whatever you want as long as you know what the tasks are. And those are all things that we can kind of determine in that main menu. Or it can be an administrative panel or anything like that, where you can actually determine and affect the level of guidance that you get. So if you don't want any of these highlights, for example, if you don't want any narration, if you don't want any text pop-ups, we can go ahead and do that. It all depends on you know, the competency or who we're building for. If we're building for you know, very well-versed people in a specific trade, then we can make it very, very simulated and less guided, and then vice versa.
So unfortunately, we are running tight on time. We were going to show you George setting up cabinetry. Unfortunately, we're not going to have time for that, but we are going to move into Q&A. I can see there are some questions coming in.
Perfect. Well, have you switched away from me?
No, you're still up.
Okay, perfect. Well, then I will just say goodbye from VR, and I will join you guys in the real world in just a moment.